Coming in at number 5 we have Capuchin Monastery, Catacombs, Palermo, Italy. This location is not for the squeamish. The Capuchin Monastery Catacombs is home to thousands of well-dressed corpses, one of the world's most bizarre and morbid tourist attractions. After walking through the monastery, you descend into the catacombs, where you have the chance to share small, enclosed space with thousands of corpses that have been well preserved. Some hanging from the walls, some laying down, and others sat on benches. They believe that having the dead on display like this shows respect to them. Here, nothing stands between the living and the dead, other than a sign asking people to be respectful. The ill-lit, musty catacombs have been separated into a few corridors, each one hosting a specific type of person. There is a room for religious figures, mainly those affiliated with the monastery, for professionals such as doctors, and a room for women. There is a corpse of a person that's said to be so well preserved that she simply looks like she is sleeping. She has been given the name Sleeping Beauty. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty terrifying. It is believed that the particularly dry atmosphere allowed for the natural mummification of the bodies. Initially, priests would lay the dead on shelves and allow them to drip until they were completely depleted of bodily fluids. A full year later, the dried out corpse would be rinsed with vinegar before being redressed in their best attire and sent to their proper room to stand for eternity. Who knows how many of their spirits still roam the catacombs with no way out? It's not a question I want to find the answer to. In at number 4 we have Black Swan Hotel in York, England. The city of York was built back in 71 AD and was founded between 8000 and 7000 BC. First inhabited by Romans, then Vikings, it has a long history, making it the perfect place for ghosts and spirits to roam. Some have even claimed that it is the most haunted city in the world. Just one of the many haunted locations in York is the Black Swan pub. It was built for William Bowes, a merchant and sheriff of York, in 1417, who also became Lord Mayor in 1428. There are few unusual features and stories surrounding the pub. There is a passageway that was built under the building. It is unclear why this was built, but there have been rumors it once led to the church. It has since been sealed off, but you can still see the stairs leading down under the building and a hallway leading off into the distance. The pub was used as a horse refuge during World War II, and there are even stories of men coming to the pub to auction off their wives during 1884. Through the history of the building, there have been a few spirits who have decided to stick around. One of the regulars is a workman in a bowler hat who regularly fidgets and tuts, as if he is waiting for someone to arrive. He is often seen walking from room to room or waiting at the bar before fading away. No one knows who this spirit is, but it is believed he has been here since 1850, when bowler hats were introduced. Some say he resembles Charlie Chaplin. But he is not the only spirit who inhabits the pub, also frequently seen as a young woman in a long white dress. She stands at the bar in the back room gazing into the fireplace. You can see the grief in the woman's face. She appears to be dealing with some kind of loss. This is just one of the many haunted buildings around York, so travel here at your own risk. In at number 3 we have the Alaskan Hotel in Alaska. Built in 1913 during the gold rush, the Alaskan Hotel is the oldest hotel in the area. The hotel was built to be a luxury experience for those passing by, as they advertised as a pocket version of the finest hostelry on the west coast. The high fashion and glitz were a paltry concealment for the legal prostitution and sale of illicit substances that went on there throughout its history. The hotel overcame many issues that it faced since opening, one being the 1980 imposition of bone-dry prohibition. They turned their bar into a cafe serving soda while also running a speakeasy like most of the previous bars at the time. The Alaskan Hotel was a brothel twice in her history, first legally and second not legal in 1977, which was shut down by the fire marshal. There is one main soul who inhabits the Alaskan Hotel today, and that is a gold miner's wife. She lived at the hotel while waiting for him to return. When he did not return, she began to support herself through prostitution. But then he did return. When he returned to his wife, he was furious with what she had been doing and then murdered her in the hotel. There have since been a number of sightings of her at the hotel. She is said to be very angry and restless. When she is around, the air goes cold, and some have reported hearing footsteps wandering the halls. Some even hear crying coming from the walls, but it is unclear where the noise is coming from. There is also a number of abandoned mines located near the town, so if you're looking for ghosts, this is the place to be. Coming in at number 2, we have City of the Dead, North Ossetia, Russia. Not many people have been to the City of the Dead. It is a dangerous and long journey to reach the village. There are also myths and legends warning that those who do reach the city never return. Reaching this mystifying destination requires a 3-hour drive, taking you down a dangerous and hidden road. It is located in North Ossetia in Russia. If you do manage to reach the city, you will come across many white huts that look like houses. However, they are not. These are actually stone crypts. It is said that in the 18th century a plague hit the city, leaving no one behind. The clans built quarantine houses for the sick. They would bring the food but not the freedom to move about until death claimed their lives. The even sadder side is that people who did not have family to build the hut or bring them food simply went to the large graveyard and simply waited for death. It was a very slow and painful way to go. For those who dare to visit the city, a little well was created outside of each home. If you drop a coin in the well and you hear it hit the stone at the bottom, then the person who died here went to heaven. If you do not hear a noise, then this indicates that the spirit did not pass on and may still be in the village. My advice would be, don't visit this city. We don't need an 18th century disease. And lastly, in at number 1, we have Craigdarroch Castle in Victoria, British Columbia. What first appears to be a beautiful castle is actually a haunted home with a tragic past. The Craigdarroch Castle was built in the 1800s as a home for a wealthy family, coal industrialist Robert Dunsmuir and his wife Joan. It was built over 2,300 meters and comprises 39 rooms. However, Robert died 17 months before the construction was completed. The original architect of the castle, Warren Haywood Williams, also unfortunately died before the finalization of the home. His son James and Alexander decided to finish the castle after their father's death. Robert's death caused a lot of trouble within the family. His sons James and Alex were disappointed that their father's business and assets had been left to their mother. They claimed that they had an oral agreement from their father that they would receive the family business. For the following years, they tried countlessly to get the family business from their mother, and after 7 years they finally received the title to the San Francisco Company. Feeling financially stable, Alex finally married his partner of 20 years, Josephine. However, their marriage only lasted 6 weeks as he died on their honeymoon in New York. When he died, the family was torn apart once more over his will. Joan and James fought for years, going to the highest court level. They did not speak during the legal battle, and then finally Joan passed away in 1908 in Craigdarroch Castle in Victoria, where she lived for 18 years. It was believed that James wouldn't attend her funeral, however he did at last. The house has now been taken over by the Craigdarroch Castle Historical Museum Society. There have been many ghost stories presumed to be connected to the Dunsmuir family. One of the main spectres is a woman who walks down the main staircase in a ball gown. No one has seen her in any other part of the castle, and she never goes up the stairs. Could it be the ghost of Joan going to greet her husband? In the basement of the home there have been sightings of a little girl crying, although they disappear if she hears anyone approaching. There have been multiple sightings of her. She is believed to be the youngest daughter of Robert, who died just months after he did. As well as these sightings, there have also been other weird goings on around the castle. Often people hear the crying of a child from various parts of the castle. Objects would also move on their own when no one was around. Some can also hear a piano being played in the dining room when no one is present, but there is no piano in the castle. It seems there are many ghosts of the Dunsmuir family within the castle walls who don't want to leave their home. Coming in at number 5, we have Aradale Asylum in Ararat, Victoria, Australia. Aradale Asylum opened its doors in 1865. It was originally named Ararat Lunatic Asylum. It was opened along with 2 sister asylums at Kew and Beechworth to accommodate the growing number of lunatics in the colony of Victoria. The asylum was built as a town within a town, with its own market, gardens, orchard, vineyards, piggery, and other stock kept on the ground. As nice as that sounds, those kept there were called inmates rather than patients, and their treatment was not kind. Many people were sent to the asylum for different reasons, mostly those struggling with mental health, and others dumped there for petty reasons. It was home to many men, women, and also children. Both electric shock therapy and the lobotomy were performed en masse at Aradale. Death was another factor that contributed to the dark history that cloaks Aradale. It is estimated that at least 13,000 deaths occurred throughout Aradale's many buildings during its 130 years of operation, meaning that up to a third of patients who entered the hospitals never came out. It is considered Australia's most haunted building to this this day, there is currently only one tour operator allowed to go into the building. People who have visited the building have a lot of similar stories about various hauntings. Many experience a bitter taste in their mouth while visiting one of the offices. When this was looked into, it is revealed that one of the head doctors poisoned himself in that very room. Others felt a weird tingling in one side or all over their body while in the electric shock therapy room. Some see faces or shadows, others hear screams or banging. There is not much to be known about the people who died within the walls or who might remain, making it a very dangerous haunted location to any visitor. Coming in at number 4, we have the Bhangarh Fort, India. The ruins of a fort city built in the 17th century, Bhangarh Fort consists of fort walls, bazaars, havelis, royal palaces and numerous temples, with 3 grand stories you can explore. But do not be fooled by the beauty of these ruins, as they are ranked as the most haunted fort in India. The place is considered to be so haunted, entry is restricted after sunset, so if you're wanting to explore, you will have to do it in the safety of the sunlight. It is known that there is a curse that hangs over the fort, put there by Singhir, someone who is well versed in black magic. He fell in love with the Princess Ratnavati, known far and wide for her beauty and kindness. Knowing he did not stand a chance with her, he enchanted her perfume so that when she used it, she would fall deeply in love with him. The princess found out about this and threw the bottle. As it flew through the air, it turned into a boulder and crushed Singhir. He was crushed under its weight, but before he died, he cursed the princess, her family, and the entire village. The next year, a battle was fought between the forces of Bhangarh and Ajabgarh, which led to the death of Ratnavati and most of the army. This was believed to be a result of the curse. It was due to this curse that no one in the village or fort could be reborn. It is forever condemned to desolation and is inhabited by ghosts. If any villager tries to build a roof, it apparently mysteriously collapses. The curse is said to have trapped the souls of those lost within the desolate fort. The guards keep watch to ensure no one enters after dark. It is not a safe place to be when the spirits awake at night. Coming in at number 3, Castle of Good Hope in South Africa. This oldest colonial building in South Africa, the Castle of Good Hope, is a pentagonal fortress built by Dutch colonialists in the 17th century. The well-known landmark is central to the history of Cape Town, having served as the seat of government and military operations for 2 centuries. The first ghost was spotted in 1915 when the apparition of a tall gentleman was seen jumping off the side of one of the castle walls and then walking between the bastions Leerdam and Orange. The other famous ghost who walked the grounds was the Lady in Grey. It is not known exactly who she is, but she would be seen hysterically crying into her hands and running around the castle. She used to be seen frequently by those on the grounds. However, during one of those renovations of the castle, the remains of a woman were uncovered and removed. Since these were removed, the woman has not been seen. It seems she was waiting for her remains to be found. Maybe her death was a sinister attack covered up and her body was lost until that day. The castle today has 3 museums and often tours of the old buildings. Be careful if you visit though, as it appears the spirits who have existed there were not happy ones. Coming in at number 2, Hellfire Club in Ireland. The Hellfire Club was a hunting lodge built in 1925 for William Connolly, an Irish parliamentary speaker. The stones of the buildings are from ancient passage tombs said to have angered the devil, which first associated the site with the supernatural. The lodge reportedly became a gathering place for a small group of Dublin elites who met for debauchery and devil worship. Its ruins sit atop the summit of Montpellier Hill in the foothills of the Dublin Mountains. Most who stumble upon the Hellfire Club today will assume it is nothing more than an old derelict building, but it has a long past full of horrific tales. Tales of animal sacrifice, black masses, cloven-hoofed men and murder are linked to the structure. The most popular tales tells of a visit by a satanic creature, in the form of a man who was only discovered when one of the players dropped a card and on picking it up noticed the guest had cloven feet. On his discovery, the creature disappeared in a ball of flames. One well-known ghost at the club is that of a young lady. It is said that she crossed paths with the club during one of their dark meetings. She was then thrown into a barrel, set on fire and rolled down the hill for fun. Her spirit stayed, possibly to warn others not to enter and meet the same fate. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Poveglia Island in Italy. Poveglia is a small island located between Venice and Lido in the Venetian lagoon, northern Italy. A small canal divides the island into 2 separate parts. The island first appeared in the historical record in 421. In the 14th century, Venetians infected by the bubonic plague were sent here to die, and when they died, they were burned on giant pyres. The site was also used as a mental asylum during the 1800s, where patients were experimented on and tortured. If you ask any of the local locals, they will all agree that the island is cursed with unhealthy spirits. Voices and screams can often be heard, and visitors see dark figures. Many visitors say they begin to feel an oppressive, evil feeling as soon as they step on the island. Currently, the island is abandoned. No one steps foot on it for any reason. Even if you did want to visit, you would struggle to find anyone willing to take you. The locals know the island to be evil and refuse to get anywhere close to it. Fishermen even avoid fishing in the area surrounding the island out of fear of accidentally finding and disturbing human remains. It's probably for the best that you don't visit this haunted location unless you're really determined, but that never ends well in horror movies. Coming in at number 5, we have Isle of Wight in England. Located off the south coast of England, it's known for its beaches and seafront promenades such as sandy Shanklin Beach and south-facing Ventnor Beach, which is dotted with vintage beach huts. The Isle of Wight is reputed to be one of the spookiest places in the UK and is often referred to by enthusiasts as Ghost Island. Ventnor Botanics Ghostly Gardens is known for its beautiful plants, but also as the most haunted place on the Isle of Wight. Long before it became the tourist attraction it is today, the Ventnor Botanic Gardens used to be the location of the Royal National Hospital, where patients were treated for the deadly killer disease tuberculosis. Over the years, thousands unfortunately died at the hospital until it was finally closed and demolished in 1969. Since the building was demolished and the gardens created, there have been many ghostly sightings. Some guests have seen a woman dressed in a patient gown walking around the gardens, although you can never get close enough to speak with her. Others have encountered a nurse walking up and down the gardens as if she is checking in on patients. There are several remnants of the old hospital still remaining, including a dark Victorian refuse tunnel which leads out from the gardens to the edge of the cliff. The lighthouse at St. Catherine's Point is a spectacular place to watch storms work their way across the English Channel, and on clear nights gives a perfect view of the stars and Milky Way, making it a popular spot for night photography. But you may find more than just keen photographers on a late night visit. There are many spooky tales surrounding the lighthouse, which is located near the village of Nitton on the south of the Isle of Wight. These range from ghost animal sightings to unexpected footsteps and vanishing items. There was a tragedy that happened at the lighthouse during World War II while 3 watchers were on duty. A bomb was dropped, killing all 3 of the guards. A plaque was placed in their memory, but it is said that they still keep watch at the lighthouse, which is now fully automated. There are several other haunted locations on the Isle, all with their own stories and ghosts. Would you want to make a trip to discover all of them? Coming in at number 4, we have the Paris Catacombs in France. The Paris Catacombs are underground ossuaries in Paris, France. An ossuary is a chest box, building, well, or a site made to serve as the final resting place of human skeletal remains. They are frequently used where burial space is scarce. A body is first buried in a temporary grave, then after some years the skeletal remains are removed and placed in an ossuary. Due to this taking up much less space than a coffin, it means more remains can be stored. Due to this, the Paris Catacombs holds the remains of more than 6 million people. There are plenty of urban legends and ghost stories lurking in the skeletal maze. In the late 18th century, when major public health problems tied to the city cemeteries led to a decision to transfer their contents to an underground site, the site was consecrated as the Paris Municipal Ossuary on April 7, 1786, and from that time forward took on the mythical name of the Catacombs, in reference to the Roman catacombs, which had fascinated the public since the discovery. Starting in 1809, the catacombs was open to the public by appointment. As you walk through the maze of the catacombs, the walls are paved with human remains. Skulls are propping up other bones as you work your way. While the catacombs span almost 200 miles long, only about a mile of the tunnels is open to the public, and yet that hasn't stopped others from trying to enter the closed-off areas of the catacombs through its many secret entrances hidden around Paris. During the course of the French Revolution, it is said that thousands of remains were dumped unceremoniously in the stone quarries that became the catacombs, so there is no clear record of exactly who and how many people's remains live in the tunnels. There have been many stories from the catacombs. One event even inspired the film As Above So Below from 2014, which I love and I've referenced many times on this channel. There was a group touring the catacombs who came across a video camera that had been left behind. It appeared to have been there a long time. It was covered in dust and was hard to see unless you were looking in depth. To their surprise, the camera had footage still on it. As they watched it, it appeared to show a man lost in the catacombs. they saw as he slowly went mad. Unable to find a way out, the footage stopped abruptly when he dropped the camera. It is said that the man nor his remains were ever found, and all they had to know that he was ever down there was this footage. They also heard disturbing noises on the footage, screams that did not come from the man recording. They witnessed some things that they could not explain. The legend says that if you were inside of the Paris catacombs after midnight, the walls begin to speak. Disembodied voices will try to persuade you to venture deeper and deeper into the catacombs until you can't find your way out. In at number 3 we have RMS Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. From the time her construction began in 1930 in Clydebank, Scotland, the Queen Mary was destined to stand in a class all on her own. Despite suffering economic setbacks during the Great Depression, which stalled construction on the ship for several years, Cunard Line spared no expense on building the Queen Mary. On May 27, 1936, the Queen Mary departed from Southampton in England, embarking on her maiden voyage. She boasted 5 dining areas and lounges, 2 cocktail bars and swimming pools, a grand ballroom, a squash court, and even a small hospital. The Queen Mary had set a new benchmark in transatlantic travel, which the rich and famous considered as the only civilized way to travel. She quickly seized the hearts and imaginations of the public on both sides of the Atlantic, representing the spirit of an era known for its elegance, class, and style. During its first 3 years at sea, the Queen Mary carried dignitaries and Hollywood celebrities including General Dwight Eisenhower, Elizabeth Taylor, and Audrey Hepburn. However, her days as the luxury liner she was designed to be were short-lived, and in 1939 it was painted a camouflaged grey colour and was stripped of its amenities and began its second life as the Grey Ghost, a World War II troop ship. The Queen Mary was the largest and fastest troop ship to sail, capable of transporting as many as 16,000 troops at 30 knots. After the end of World War II, the Queen Mary began a 10-month retrofitting process which would return the ship to her original glory. On July 21, 1947, the Queen Mary resumed regular passenger service across the Atlantic Ocean, and continued to do so for nearly 2 more decades. The Queen Mary is now a floating hotel, holding luxury events and putting on shows. However, her days in the war could not be wiped away with her restoration, and it is said a number of spirits live on the ship today. Certain rooms have even been closed to the public due to their paranormal activity. Stateroom B340 has been investigated by many different scare enthusiasts, and even featured on Sci-Fi Channel's Ghost Hunters and the British TV series Most Haunted. The first reports of paranormal activity in room B340 date all the way back to 1967, with the guest complaining that someone was knocking on her door during the night, but when she got up to confront them, no one was there. Other complaints include bathroom lights turning on by themselves, the sink faucet turning on and off on its own, and unexplained bathroom doors shutting. Some guests have reported the covers of their bed being pulled off while asleep and waking to see a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. But who is the figure in room B340? It is said that along with a number of deaths aboard during the war, there was also a murder in one of the rooms. Could this be the victim in room B340? This is not the only ghost on board. Another famous tale is that of a young man who worked on the ship. One night in 1966, the watertight doors in the engine and boiler rooms were ordered to be closed. About 5 minutes later, an 18-year-old crew member was found crushed in the door of hatch 13, trapped with his arms pinned to his side. They pulled him out and rushed him to hospital, but it was already too late. His ghost is regularly seen around the area now, with people reporting the sound of someone running behind them and whistling. Others have noticed that spots of grease that look like fingerprints appeared on their faces. Some have seen a figure of a bearded man in blue overalls that looks just like the man who died out of the corner of their eyes, and several others have said that they saw an engineer wandering the hallways asking if guests had seen his wrench, but when they went back to find him, he had disappeared. Coming in at number 2, we have Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. This menacing Gothic-style prison opened in Philadelphia in 1829 and became the first in the US to implement solitary confinement, a widely debated practice. It was seen as an experiment on how this practice could be used around the world. Spectators from around the world marveled at its grand architecture. Once built, it was the most expensive construction in the United States at the time. It was a cruel attempt to reform prisoners, the idea being that solitude would lead to penance. Critics, on the other hand, believed it incited emotional anguish comparable to physical torture. They must have found it to be a successful experiment, with the prison replicated in several other states and in Europe. Prisoners were kept in small brick rooms with only one slither of light coming from above. They had no windows or any other type of stimuli stimulant while in there. They would receive daily contact from the warden and overseers. If they did have to be moved around the building, a hood was placed over their head so that they would not have a glimpse of the outside world. They saw this as a system of reform rather than punishment. The warden was legally required to visit every inmate every day, and the overseers were mandated to see each inmate 3 times a day. It is even said that Pep the dog was sentenced to life without parole for killing Governor Gifford Pinchot's wife's cat. Prison records reflect that Pep was assigned an inmate number C2559, which is seen in his mugshot, although some claim he was gifted to the prisoner's therapy dog to help inmates. Gangster Al Capone spent a year imprisoned at Eastern State, where he furnished his cell with luxurious antiques, rugs, and paintings, making it seem like inmates had some control and comfort over their lives. However, the prison's 142-year history is full of death, madness, disease, murder, and torture, making it easy to imagine the spirits of troubled souls left behind to roam its abandoned halls. The harsh punishments used on prisoners are enough to make you shiver even without seeing a ghost. There was the water bath, in which inmates were dunked, then hung out on a wall in winter until ice formed on their skin. The mad chair, which bound an inmate so tightly that circulation was cut off, later necessitating amputations. The iron gag, in which an inmate's hands were tied from the back and strapped to an iron collar in their mouth, so that any movement caused the tongue to tear and bleed profusely. Since the prison closed in 1971, dozens of paranormal researchers visit every year and report that it's a hub of otherworldly activity. Perhaps most convincingly, there are the stories of eerie experiences by visitors, staff, guards, and inmates that have corroborated each other since the 1940s. Cell Block 12 is known for echoing voices and cackling, Cell Block 6 for shadowy figures darting along the walls, Cell Block 4 for visions of ghostly faces. Many people have reported seeing a silhouette of a guard in one of the towers, footsteps, wails, whispers, the same stories over and over again. And lastly, in at number 1, we have the Shanghai Tunnels in Portland, Oregon. Located below Portland, Oregon are a complex maze of tunnels that lead all over the city. These tunnels were created and used for Shanghaiing. Shanghaiing was the practice of stealing able-bodied men and then selling them onto the ship captains for the purpose of work. These men were sold for as little as $50 a head and often spent many years in captivity at sea. These poor men were then forced to work on ships bound for the Orient with no pay. According to legend, as well as some historical data, men were shanghaied in Portland from roughly 1850 to 1941. Things were supposedly at their worst during Prohibition. The Shanghai Tunnels, or Portland Underground, consist of tunnel passages linking Portland's Old Town, Chinatown, to the central downtown area of Portland. The basements of many downtown bars and hotels were linked to the Willamette River waterfront through the tunnels, allowing supplies to be moved from ships docked there directly to basements for storage. Since the mid-19th century, stories have been told about Shanghai practices in Portland. Not only men, but also women were warned to take care against being drugged or kidnapped and hauled off for sale. Women were stolen and sold to men also, but not for shipping labor at the same value as men. The middlemen would wait at the bar for an able-looking man to take the seat next to him. He would attempt to gain his trust, buy him a drink, and then drug him. Once drugged, they would drop the man down the trapdoors located in the bar. Once in the tunnels, they were locked in specially designed prison cells and held captive until they were shipped off as slave laborers. During Prohibition, it is said that the bars moved their operations underground, as well as making it easier than ever for unsuspecting victims to be shanghaied. It is said that around 1,500 people were kidnapped a year through the tunnels, and various stories have been told. The locals often dispute that the tunnels were used for this reason. Others believe in the stories and evidence found in the tunnels. Not only were these people held prisoner in the tunnels until their sale, some even died as a result of the conditions underground. The tunnels are said to be haunted by the aggrieved spirits of the captives who died in the dark recesses beneath the city. Those who have toured the tunnels have heard running in the distance, screams coming from all directions, and sometimes even crying from deep within the tunnels. With such a dark past, it is no surprise the locals deny any of this happening and may have even covered up the details.